After that one encounter, my life was never the same. I was returning from my friend's house late at night, driving along a desolate road flanked by endless cornfields. My house was still 40 minutes away, and the growling of my empty stomach echoed in the silence. Yet there was no sign of a house or another person anywhere. Frustrated, I decided to take a shortcut and turned onto a smaller road. Instead of leading me home, the path took me into a dense forest. The sounds of animals echoed eerily in the darkness, and the narrow road made me realize I was far from civilization. Despite the unsettling atmosphere, I pressed on, determined not to stop. After a few kilometers, a glimmer of hope appeared, a McDonald's drive-thru, lit up like a beacon in the night. Relieved, I pulled into the empty drive-thru lane. The place seemed deserted except for a young, thin man asleep with his head resting on the counter. I honked twice, startling him awake. "Excuse me, sir. I'm so sorry," he stammered, rubbing his eyes. "No problem," I replied, trying to reassure him. I placed my order, a Big Mac, small fries, and an ice cream. He nodded with a tired smile. "Give me a moment to prepare your food," he said and disappeared inside the restaurant. As I waited, I realized I needed to use the restroom. I got out of the car and walked toward the public restroom near a small dry fruit stand at the edge of the parking lot. Inside, as I closed the stall door, I noticed someone sitting outside on a nearby bench. It was a large man wearing a faded Ronald McDonald costume. His face was thin, almost skeletal, and his broken, uneven teeth gave his smile an unsettling quality. His hollow eyes stared at the ground as if lost in thought. Then our eyes met. His lips curled into a strange grin, and he stood up abruptly, moving toward me in an erratic, almost mechanical manner. Alarmed, I shut the stall door and bolted it. My heart pounded as I tried to dismiss the encounter as a figment of my imagination. But then I heard faint crying, soft, almost childlike. The sound sent chills down my spine. Suddenly, a loud knock on the door startled me. My heart felt like it would burst. "Your order is ready," came a cheerful voice. It was the young man from the drive-thru, holding a large bag of food. Relieved, I opened the door and took the bag from him. As we walked back to my car, I glanced at the bench where the man in the Ronald McDonald costume had been sitting. It was empty. "Is something wrong, sir?" the young man asked, noticing my nervous glances. "No, nothing," I replied, though my unease was growing. I handed him the money, got into my car, and drove off quickly. As I rolled down the window for fresh air, I tried to laugh at myself for being so jumpy. "Scared of a silly costume," I muttered, shaking my head. To distract myself, I turned on the music. Just as I reached for the button, a shrill laugh erupted from the back seat. My blood ran cold. I froze, unable to turn around, but I could feel a presence behind me. Slowly, I glanced in the rearview mirror. There he was, the man in the Ronald McDonald costume. His red, curly hair was disheveled, and his face twisted into a grotesque grin. He leaned closer, and I felt something sharp press against my neck. "You shouldn't have closed the door on me," he whispered, his voice cold and menacing. "What do you want?" I stammered, trying to stay calm. "I want to show you how sharp this knife is," he said, pressing the blade harder against my skin. Desperation surged through me. I knew I had to act carefully or risk losing my life. Okay, I said, forcing a steady tone. "Let me pull over, and we can talk." He didn't respond but nodded slightly. I slowed the car and pretended to stop, leaving the engine running. The moment he opened the back door, I slammed on the accelerator, speeding away. In my panic, I accidentally swerved toward him, knocking him to the ground. I heard the sickening crack of bones, followed by a blood-curdling scream. Glancing in the mirror, I saw him lying on the road, clutching his leg. Despite his injury, he began to crawl toward the car, dragging himself with alarming determination. His twisted smile grew wider as he inched closer. Terrified, I floored the accelerator and didn't look back. My hand shook as I gripped the steering wheel, and sweat poured down my face. Only when I was miles away did I finally allow myself to breathe. That night, I made a vow: I would never stop at a McDonald's again.